Well, joining me now is the Australian's editorial writer, Graham Lloyd. Great to have you with us, Graham. Now, I want to get straight into this story about the Greens leader, Adam Bandt. I mean, literally today, the Greens and Labor have struck a deal by which, under the National Reconstruction Fund, they won't invest in any new gas and coal projects, any fossil fuel projects. But at the same time, it's been revealed by James Morrow in the Daily Telegraph that Adam Bandt's super fund has been investing in fossil fuels. Now, I wouldn't expect, you or the ordinary person or anyone watching this to know what their super fund invests in. But if you're the Green leader and you're literally holding Labor hostage over policy, demanding that it doesn't make investments in fossil fuels, then you should be expected to know where, if you're going to get rich out of your retirement funds and your super funds, you'd be expected to know whether or not they are being invested in fossil fuels.
Yeah, hi Sherry. Well, that's exactly right. Hypocrisy is a wonderful thing that brings everybody down to earth. Now, to your point there, well, Adam Bandt should have known that his fund was investing in fossil fuels because it's been the subject of some controversy from Green groups that they were. Certainly, Mr Bandt's bank balance would be healthier for having done so because fossil fuels have been the pretty good performers over recent times. But we'll get to the point. I mean, Adam Bandt can say, well, it's in a super fund, other people are making the investment decisions, nothing to do with me. But the truth is there are alternatives there. There are ethical funds that make a big play out of doing exactly the sort of things that Adam Bandt tells everybody else to do, and he could have easily chosen one of those.
Exactly, and that's a big industry now, a lot of sustainable and ethical super funds that are starting up. Now, Origin Energy has warned that up to 600,000 households, as I mentioned a moment ago, will be facing fee increases, power bill increases of 20% come July. This is also ahead of the energy regulator unveiling changes to default offers next week. At the same time, Graham, we've got the future of Eraring. This is the country's largest coal-fired power plant. This has become quite a big issue in the New South Wales election, and Chris Minns, the Labor leader, has actually put on the table the option of buying it back to keep power prices down and also ensure reliability. How fascinating is this issue going to be? And do you think if Labor does win in 2 weeks' time, they're going to have to look at something like this with bills increasing in July?
Well, the whole thing reflects the mess that the energy market is nationally, really. The higher prices are things that have been coming through the system for some time. Everybody's known about it, and government's particularly worried about how it's going to respond. Eraring is the biggest coal-fired producer in New South Wales, and it's due to close in a couple of years' time. And the energy market operator has said, well, that's about the time that New South Wales will run short of power. So there needs to be some sort of response. I think both the Libs and the ALP have their eye on Eraring and seeing what should happen about its timing for closure. The Labor Party is following the lead, if you like, of Dan Andrews and saying, privatisation has been the problem. The answer is to renationalise things. That may or may not be the case. The history is that nationalised entities often cost more and are less efficient. There needs to be really a wholesale approach to planning the energy market going forward to head off those high prices and to give some stability for consumers into the future.
Well, Matt Keane came out just last week and he said the Waratah super battery will be sufficient to fill the place of Eraring in 2025. Do you trust that a super battery is going to produce enough dispatchable power?
Well, look, it would have to be a very super battery. There may be some modelling that suggests that may be the case, but I think when you look at the scale of Eraring, you have to make some pretty heroic assumptions to say that there are things that will keep the market going stable in a stable fashion, and that a battery will be enough to take out the peaks and whatever. I think the experience is that the batteries have a certain application in keeping stability in the voltage in the system, but in terms of providing long periods of stable power, they're just not cut out for it.
Yeah. Now, Graham, you've been reporting on the environment for a very long time now. We've seen today, as I mentioned, Anthony Albanese has struck an 11th hour deal with the Greens to pass the National Reconstruction Fund through the Parliament. He commented on it from India. The parties agreed to an amendment to the bill which is preventing future governments from using the fund to invest in coal or gas projects or log native forests. Can you actually explain what the Reconstruction Fund is going to be used for? And do you think it's perfectly acceptable that this amendment has been made, or do you think it's a big deal?
Well, you have to look in the broad context of what's going on here. In the background, there's negotiations for the government's safeguard mechanism changes, which the Greens are saying that the key demand is that there be no future coal or gas developments. The fund that was the subject of legislation today is looking at investing in industry going forward. Not necessarily fossil fuel industry, but in the past, the Morrison government has said, well, look, they will use these kind of funds to kickstart gas development in the Beetaloo Basin and build pipelines and other things. The Greens have said, we don't want this fund to be used for that. The government has said, well, we never intended that it would be, but they've excluded it. And what that has allowed the Greens to do is make a big deal about the fact that the government is recognising there is no future for fossil fuels in Australia. They're going to bag that and take it to negotiations for the safeguard mechanism and try and extend that squeeze, if you like, on the fossil fuel industry. And that's a bit of a trap there for the Albanese government.
All right, Graham Lloyd, thank you very much for joining me.